Hello, and welcome. Let the sounds of the world around you begin to soften and fade. Let your body feel heavy and at ease. We are going to take a gentle journey together. Back through the mists of time, imagine a river, a long, slow-moving river, its surface like polished glass, reflecting the soft light of a crescent moon. This is the river of time, and we are going to drift along its current, back, to a world of marble and myth, of wisdom and whispers. Our destination is a city that was once the heart of the world, a city built on 7 gentle hills, cradled by the slow, winding curves of the Tiber River. This is Rome. Feel the soft, warm air of the Mediterranean evening. See the first stars beginning to appear in the deep violet sky. The temples and forums are quiet now, the great stone columns rising like slumbering dents. In this city of echoes, we will find the story of a life that, like a single, strong current, changed the course of the river of time forever. His name was Gaius Julius Caesar. But for now, there is no need to think of great events or mighty deeds. Just allow the gentle glow of ancient Rome to fill your mind's eye. Allow the peace of this bygone world to settle over you. As we begin our story, the ambient hum softens even further. A very faint, slow harp melody begins to play, simple and repetitive. Part 1. In the heart of this sprawling city, in a respectable, but not overly wealthy, neighborhood, a child was born. The year, by our modern count, was 100 BC. His name, Gaius Julius, was a good Roman name. His family, the Julii, were patricians, one of the old, noble families of Rome. They traced their lineage back through the city's founding kings, and even further, to the heroes of Troy, and to the goddess Venus herself. Imagine a young boy walking through the cobbled streets. The sounds are different then, the gentle clip-clop of sandals on stone, the distant murmur of voices from the forum, the scent of baking bread and fragrant olive oil. Young Caesar was bright and curious. His mind was quick. His gaze, even as a boy, was said to be sharp and direct. He learned the lessons of a Roman nobleman. He studied rhetoric, the art of speaking beautifully and persuasively. He learned to fill his words with grace and power, to move the hearts and minds of others. He studied the great philosophers of Greece, learning to think with logic and reason. His mother, Aurelia Cotta, was a wise and respected woman. She instilled in him a sense of discipline and a quiet confidence. His father was a politician, making his way along the traditional Roman path of public service. The world Caesar was born into was a world of change. The old Roman Republic, a system of laws and shared power, was beginning to strain. Powerful men, like his uncle Gaius Marius, and the formidable Lucius Cornelius Sulla, were like great tides, pulling the city in different directions. They were whispers of conflict, of rivalry, of ambition. But for a young boy, this was simply the world as it was, a complex, and sometimes dangerous, place. When Caesar was still a young man, the tide of power shifted. The formidable Sulla became the dictator of Rome, and his gaze fell upon the nephew of his rival. Caesar was forced to leave Rome, to go into hiding. Imagine him, for a moment, finding refuge in the quiet hills of the Italian countryside. The danger a distant echo, the peace of nature all around him. He decided to travel east, to study in the great schools of Rhodes. He boarded a ship and set out across the calm, blue expanse of the Mediterranean Sea. But his journey was interrupted. The ship was captured by pirates. Now, this may sound like a moment of great peril, but the story is told with a sense of calm amusement. Caesar, with his unshakable confidence, was not a typical captive. He treated the pirates not as his captors, but as his audience. He wrote speeches and poems, and recited them to the rough seamen. He would joke with them, and tell them that one day he would return and see them all crucified. The pirates, we are told, found this rather charming. When his ransom was paid, and he was set free, Caesar was as good as his word. He raised a small fleet, found the pirates' hideout, and captured them, but even in this, there was a quiet, measured quality. He had them executed, as was the Roman way. But it is said he had their throats cut first, to spare them the prolonged agony of crucifixion, a small act of mercy. In a harsh world, he eventually made his way back to Rome. Sulla was gone, and the city was, for a time, at peace. Caesar was ready to begin his own journey. Up the long, winding staircase of Roman politics, a path known as the cursus honorum, the course of honors, he began, as all young aspiring Romans did, as a lawyer in the forum. His voice, so carefully trained, was calm and persuasive. He defended the common people, and slowly, quietly, began to make a name for himself. Pause. The harp music fades slightly, and the sound of a gentle, lapping water is introduced. Part 2. The Ascending Path. 25 minutes and 0 seconds to 50 minutes and 0 seconds. The path to power in Rome was a slow and deliberate climb. It was a series of steps, each one earned through service and reputation. Caesar took his first step, becoming a military tribune, a junior officer in a Roman legion. Here, he learned the rhythms of the army, the quiet discipline of the soldiers, the steady, marching beat that had conquered a world. Then, he was elected quaestor. This was a financial administrator. He was sent to a distant province. In Hispania, or modern-day Spain, imagine the quiet, sun-drenched landscapes of southern Spain, the rolling hills covered in olive groves, the sleepy, whitewashed towns. Here, Caesar managed finances and traveled from town to town, settling disputes. He was known for his fairness and his boundless energy. It was here, in Spain, that a quiet moment of reflection is said to have occurred. One afternoon, in the city of Gades, Caesar stood before a statue of Alexander the Great. He looked at the face of the young conqueror, who had built a vast empire by the age of 32. Caesar, at this point, was nearly the same age. It is said that he sighed quietly, not in envy, but with a sense of all the things he had yet to do, a quiet, personal moment of a man contemplating his own place in the river of time. He returned to Rome, his ambition now a calm, steady flame. He was elected aedile. This was a man in charge of the public works and games of the city. While others used this position for lavish, noisy displays, Caesar did something different. He spent his own money, certainly, but he focused on works of lasting beauty and utility. He had the Appian Way, the great road leading south from Rome, repaired. He had new public buildings constructed, temples and basilicas, their marble columns rising in graceful, silent splendor. The people of Rome saw this. They saw a man who cared for the beauty and order of their city. His popularity grew, not like a wildfire, but like a deep, underground spring, slowly rising to the surface. During this time, Caesar formed a quiet understanding with two of the most powerful men in Rome. One was Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, known as Pompey the Great, Rome's most celebrated general. The other was Marcus Licinius Crassus, the wealthiest man in Rome. Together, these three men formed what we now call the First Triumvirate. It was not a formal, legal arrangement, but a private agreement, a weaving together of three powerful threads: Caesar's popularity with the people, Pompey's military might, and Crassus's incredible wealth. Together, they could quietly guide the course of the Republic with the support of his powerful friends. Caesar was elected consul, the highest office in the Roman Republic. For 1 year, he was, in essence, the co-leader of Rome. He passed laws to help the poor and to distribute land to retired soldiers. His actions were not loud or disruptive, but calm, deliberate, and effective. When his year as consul was over, a new chapter of his life was set to begin, a chapter that would take him far from the warm marble of Rome to the wild, ancient forests of the north. He was appointed governor of a province called Gaul, a vast and largely unknown land. The sound of lapping water fades, replaced by the gentle rustling of leaves and a soft, ambient forest sound. Part 3. The Whispers of Gaul. 50 minutes and 0 seconds to 1 hour 30 minutes and 0 seconds. Gaul. The name itself was a whisper on the Roman tongue. A land of deep forests, of swirling mists, of proud, independent tribes. It stretched from the Alps in the east to the great ocean in the west. A land we now know as France, Belgium, and parts of Switzerland and Germany, for nearly a decade. This would be Caesar's world. Imagine him, leaving the familiar, sun-baked stones of Rome behind, traveling north into a world of cooler air and taller trees. His task, as governor, was to protect the Roman frontier, to keep the peace. But the tribes of Gaul were restless. They were a people of great courage, and they valued their freedom above all else. What followed was not a single, clamorous war, but a long, slow series of campaigns, a gradual extension of Roman influence, like a tide slowly rising on a distant shore. Let us not dwell on the clash of swords or the din of battle. Instead, let us imagine Caesar as a master of strategy, a solver of complex puzzles. Think of the Roman legions, not as a force of destruction, but as a marvel of engineering and discipline. Tens of thousands of men, moving as one, building bridges over wide, fast-flowing rivers in a matter of days, constructing fortified camps each night, perfect squares of earth and wood, offering a small pocket of Roman order in the vast wilderness. Caesar himself was always in motion. He traveled with his men, sharing their rations, sleeping under the same starry sky. His energy was a source of quiet wonder to his soldiers. He wrote about his campaigns in a clear, simple style. His writings are not boastful, but factual and direct. He describes the customs of the Gallic tribes, their beliefs, their way of life. He speaks of their leaders, men like the noble Diviciacus of the Aedui, or the proud Ambiorix of the Eburones, with a kind of detached respect. He led his legions into lands no Roman had ever seen. He crossed the Rhine River into the dark forests of Germania. He did not go to conquer, but to show that a Roman army could go anywhere it chose. He built a great wooden bridge, marched his army across, stayed for a few weeks, and then marched back, dismantling the bridge behind him. A quiet statement of power and reach. On another occasion, he looked west, across the churning gray waters of the English Channel. He gathered ships and led a small force to the mysterious island of Britannia. Imagine the white cliffs of Dover, rising from the mist. The Romans were the first to bring their world to this remote, green island. They fought no great battles. They stayed for only a short time. But they had crossed the ocean. They had sailed to the very edge of the known world. The greatest challenge in Gaul came near the end of his time there. A young, charismatic chieftain of the Arverni tribe, named Vercingetorix, managed to do what no one else had. He united the warring Gallic tribes against the Romans. Vercingetorix was a clever and worthy opponent. He led a great rebellion, a final, desperate attempt to preserve the freedom of Gaul. The final act of this long drama took place at a hilltop fortress called Alesia. Vercingetorix and his massive army gathered inside the fortress. Caesar arrived, and seeing that a direct assault would be impossible, he began a siege. But this was a siege of incredible scale and quiet ingenuity. Caesar's legions built a wall around the entire hilltop, a wall 11 miles long, with towers and trenches, sealing Vercingetorix inside. Then, hearing that a huge Gallic relief army was coming to attack him from the outside, Caesar did something astonishing. He ordered his men to build a second wall, facing outwards, a wall 13 miles long. His army was now sandwiched between two great Gallic forces, besieged and besieging at the same time. Imagine the quiet tension of those weeks. The Roman soldiers, working day and night, moving earth, cutting timber, their movements efficient and precise. When the final battle came, it was fought on all sides at once, but the Roman lines held. The discipline, the engineering, The quiet resolve of the legions was unbreakable. The Gallic relief army was driven away. Inside Alesia, there was now no hope. Vercingetorix, to spare his people from starvation, chose to surrender. The story is told that he put on his finest armor, mounted his war horse, and rode out of the gates of Alesia alone. He rode to where Caesar was seated, dismounted, and laid his weapons at Caesar's feet. A moment of profound, quiet dignity. In the midst of defeat, the Gallic wars were over. The whole of Gaul, from the mountains to the sea, was now under Roman control. Caesar had been away from Rome for 8 long years, and in that time, the city had changed. The forest sounds fade, replaced by the soft, mournful sound of a single flute. Part 4. The Rubicon stillness. 1 hour 30 minutes and 0 seconds to 1 hour 45 minutes and 0 seconds while Caesar had been in the misty forests of Gaul. The threads that held the triumvirate together had begun to fray. Crassus, the wealthy partner, had been killed in a disastrous war in the east. And Pompey the Great, once Caesar's ally and son-in-law, was now the sole power in Rome, and he had grown wary of Caesar's success. The Senate, influenced by Pompey and other powerful nobles, grew fearful of Caesar's popularity and his fiercely loyal army. They saw him as a threat to the old ways of the Republic. They sent him a message. He was to disband his army and return to Rome as a private citizen. Caesar knew what this meant. To return without his legions would be to place himself at the mercy of his political enemies. He led his favorite legion, the 13th, south, out of Gaul, and to the border of Italy. The border was marked by a small, shallow river. A stream, really. Its name was the Rubicon. By Roman law, no general was permitted to bring his army into Italy. To cross the Rubicon was an act of treason, an act of war. Imagine the scene, a quiet, moonlit night. The legion is camped on the northern bank. The soldiers are silent, waiting. Caesar stands on the river bank, looking across the still, dark water. He is contemplating the fate of the world. For a long time, he stood in silence. The only sound was the gentle murmur of the water. Then, in a quiet, resolute voice, almost a whisper to himself, he said the words that have echoed through history. Alia iacta est. The die is cast. He gave the order. The legionaries lifted their standards and began to walk across the shallow stream. The water lapped gently at their boots. There was no turning back. The news of his crossing reached Rome with astonishing speed, and it caused not a wave of defiance, but a wave of panic. Pompey and the majority of the Senate, their courage failing them, decided to abandon the city. They fled east, across the sea to Greece, to gather their own armies. Caesar's march south through Italy was not a conquest, but a peaceful procession. City after city opened its gates to him. He did not punish or plunder. He showed clemency, a calm and reassuring forgiveness. The civil war would be decided in Greece, on the plains of Pharsalus. Imagine two vast Roman armies, facing each other under the hot summer sun. On one side, the larger army of Pompey and the Senate. On the other, Caesar's experienced, devoted legions. From a distance, the battle would have looked like a slow, deliberate dance of giants, the great blocks of infantry, moving forward in perfect order. Caesar's tactical genius and the unbreakable spirit of his soldiers won the day. Pompey's army was defeated. He himself escaped, a fugitive now. He sailed to Egypt, seeking refuge. But the rulers of Egypt, fearing Caesar's power, made a terrible choice. When Caesar arrived in Egypt, a few days later, he was presented with a gift. It was the signet ring and the head of his great rival, Pompey. It is said that Caesar turned his face away and wept, not for the victory, but for the sad, ignoble end of a great Roman. The flute music fades into a soft, contemplative silence for a few moments. Part 5. The mantle of power. 1 hour 45 minutes and 0 seconds to 1 hour 55 minutes and 0 seconds. Caesar was now the undisputed master of the Roman world. The wars were over. The time for rebuilding had begun, he returned to Rome, not as a conqueror, but as a restorer of order. The Senate, with no other choice, showered him with honors. They named him dictator, at first for 10 years, and then for life. He held this immense power, not with the arrogance of a king, but with the quiet efficiency of a master administrator. Imagine him now, not as a general, but as a wise gardener, tending to the vast, overgrown garden of the Roman state. He tackled the problems of the city with calm, practical solutions. The Roman calendar was a mess, out of sync with the seasons. Caesar, with the help of astronomers from Alexandria, reformed it. He created a new calendar, with 365 days, and an extra day every 4 years. It is the basis of the calendar we still use today. The month of Quintilis was renamed in his honor, Julius. July. He ordered a great census of the people. He launched huge public works projects, building a new forum, a great library, and magnificent temples. He brought a sense of purpose and renewal to the city. He offered land in distant provinces, to retired soldiers, and to the poor of Rome, giving them a new start, and a new sense of hope. During his time in Egypt, he had met the young queen, Cleopatra. She was a woman of great intelligence and captivating charm. They became allies and lovers. She came to Rome and lived in a villa on the outskirts of the city, a quiet, exotic presence in the world of Roman politics. Caesar seemed to be at the height of his power. He was celebrated. He was loved by the people. He had brought peace and stability after decades of chaos. He planned new campaigns to the east to avenge the defeat of Crassus. He seemed to have endless energy, endless plans for the future. But in the quiet corners of the Senate house, old resentments and old fears began to fester. Some senators, men who came from the oldest and proudest families in Rome, saw Caesar not as a savior, but as a tyrant. They believed that his power was a threat to the very idea of the Roman Republic. They saw his statues, his honors, and they feared he wanted to be a king. A shadow was growing. In the heart of Rome, a conspiracy began to form, a quiet, deadly whisper in the hallowed halls of power. A low, somber cello note begins to play, very softly. Epilogue. The Ides of March and the general fade to silence. 1 hour 55 minutes and 0 seconds to 2 hours 0 minutes and 0 seconds. The date was the 15th of March, the Ides of March, as the Romans called it. The day was overcast, the air heavy and still. Caesar was warned not to go to the Senate that day. His wife, Calpurnia, had had terrible nightmares. A soothsayer had famously warned him, "Beware the Ides of March." But Caesar, ever confident, ever dismissive of superstition, decided to go. He walked into the theater of Pompey, where the Senate was meeting. As he entered, the senators rose to greet him. Then, the conspirators, perhaps 60 in number, crowded around him, as if to present a petition. What happened next was a blur of sudden, sharp motion. We will not linger on the violence. Think of it not as a brutal attack, but as a great tree. A tree that had stood for decades against every storm. Suddenly, shockingly, falling in a silent forest, a great light being extinguished. It is said he did not cry out, that he saw among the faces of his attackers the face of a young man he had mentored and loved, Marcus Junius Brutus. His last words, whispered in Greek, were a quiet expression of surprise and sorrow. "Kaisu, Tenon, you too, my child." He pulled his toga over his head and fell at the base of a statue of his great rival, Pompey. For a moment, there was a stunned silence in the great hall. Then, panic, the senators fled. The body of the great Caesar lay alone on the cold marble floor. His death did not restore the Republic, as the conspirators had hoped. Instead, it plunged the Roman world into more than a decade of fresh civil war. But that is a story for another time. Our story, the story of Gaius Julius Caesar, ends here. In the quiet aftermath of the Ides of March. His life, like a great river, had run its course. It flowed now, into the vast, silent ocean of history. His name, his story, would be whispered down through the centuries, a timeless echo in the memory of the world. And now, as our journey ends, let the story fade, let the echoes soften. Return to the gentle feeling of your breath, flowing in and out. The river of time flows on, carrying all things towards the great sea of tranquility. Rest now. Sleep now. Peace. The somber cello note fades completely. For the final minutes, only the very soft, ambient sound of a gentle breeze remains. The screen slowly fades to complete black,